Okay, so this is my first time really talking about an essay that I've written, and I thought this was a perfect space to start sharing the research that I've been doing over the last year with Ceremony LM, which is a community language model and research project really focused on collaborative storytelling, but really slowness and slow technology and relational design. So I've been collecting all of these like wonderful insights and notions on where we're at in terms of our digital lives and how that really, to me, impacts how we show up in the world around us and the connections that we make and the relationships that we're making. I'm building a digital garden and making mini essays around all the research and connecting it to that outside world, why this is relevant and why I've decided to spend so much of my time looking at this. I try to be really intentional with the purpose of what I dedicate my time to, and I really think that so much of what I've been researching can give some solace to our everyday lives and help us navigate what might not make sense. Yeah. Let's just jump right into my first essay. So this was about one of the first articles that I really dove into, and I used this article actually as supplementary material for the grant with Canada Council. I have a digital greenhouse grant that will be wrapping up this summer. Yeah, this article is called "The Internet Could Be So Good, Really." It's by Deb Roy. He's a professor at MIT. I love this article. I forgot about it, quite honestly. And I just came back to it as I started building this digital garden. What great company, honestly, it provided me. So the essay I shared, I start off by asking like what happens when we ask machines to do the work of being human. And it's one thing when we turn to ChatGPT and the internet for things that are more objective and, looking up how to do something or, looking for advice on things that don't really involve other people's feelings and human emotions. But when we start going to it for things that are so close to our human psyche, like validation and love and relationships, I think that's where my work is really offering a pause to think about just how much time we're spending online asking those questions versus putting in the practice in our lives outside. Yeah, what Deb Roy and his colleagues found, humans don't connect through sharing opinions and facts about things. That doesn't bring us closer. It doesn't increase empathy. It actually just drives us further apart. But the thing that does bring us closer are sharing of lived experiences. And I really, really love this piece of information because though it's so like simple and obvious, I think we don't even realize when we start trying to connect over facts and opinions, and we do speak about them as if they are our lived experiences or our personal accounts. Though it seems so obvious in practice, we need practice, basically. Sharing of lived experiences is when real knowledge exchange happens. I can start to understand your perspective. I can start to also understand maybe why we think differently if we do. What I said in my essay is that sharing experiences forces us to abandon picking sides. We confront the nuance and subjectivity that is being human and move towards building a capacity to hold multiple truths. This is something we struggle with so greatly. This idea that what is true to you and what is true to me exists at the exact same time because we've both had such different experiences to bring us here. And I'm not talking, obviously, I'm not talking about right and wrong. I'm talking about, again, really subjective lived experiences and how when you share something about your life and why you see something the way you do, and I share something about my life, and we both see the same thing in different ways, that's okay. It's about having more of the conversation about why and not focusing on what. This really forced me to sit down and be like, I was like, okay, what sets us apart from AI is having those lived experiences. But as people start to argue about AI and ChatGPT and these systems and large language models really growing in size, Some might argue that they actually do have our lived experiences to reference. And so I was like, okay, let's take it a step deeper. What really sets us apart? And me, I'm landing on our feelings. ChatGPT might have a vast vocabulary about feelings, but it doesn't know what it feels like being in a human body. The fact that feelings change and they're unpredictable. In my essay, I say it doesn't know what it feels like to grieve, to grow up between cultures, to dance in your living room, or to hear your name spoken by someone who loves you. And yet, we increasingly turn to it not only for answers on productivity, but really for intimate advice and emotional connection. Even in the last week, I've seen news about someone marrying their AI and they have a partner and a child. I've heard about Meta rolling out Instagram friends. I've seen people post reels about seeing people messaging ChatGPT on their phone as if they're texting somebody and saying like, thank you so much, love you at the end. I really think that this chat capacity of ChatGPT, though it can be really beautiful, it does worry me a lot about our ability to continue to see the value in connecting with humans and the depth of feeling that can be found there, and our capacity for discomfort in those human relationships. I think it comes down to asking ourselves, like, do we really care about our own or others' feelings? Are we willing to confront the basic fact that we have them? And I almost feel embarrassed asking this, but I feel like it's come to the point where it's necessary. We have feelings and we can't deny them. And the more and more we deny them, I think that's where we're seeing these really intense acts of rebellion, of violence, of resentment towards the other human beings that don't want to be around us.
People often thought of loneliness in the realm of something we manage on our own that doesn't really fall into health concerns, or it's not an economic concern or a community concern. But it turns out it is all of those things.
Tempers flare and a punch is thrown at a Board of Ed meeting in Glastonbury.
When we are lonely, it impacts how we show up in the rest of our lives. It impacts how we show up at work. And it impacts how we show up in the public square and the dialogue that we have with others in our community.
I think that there obviously is a place for boundaries, and we want to be able to still have the capacity to move through the world, so we can't be feeling everything all the time. And for someone who's really sensitive, like, it's so hard to find those boundaries, but having some sort of relationship with our feelings is so important. We combust when we don't feel our feelings. When I think about AI being mostly facts and opinions, and it's scraping the internet from what's on there, then those are the same things that Deb Roy and his colleagues found that separate us. And AI doesn't have feelings and lived experience itself. Is it just giving us advice or pieces of information that will then further separate us? And again, I'm talking about when we go to it for relationship advice, for advice that involves people's feelings. Yeah, sometimes more information is obviously helpful, but I'm really worried about our over-reliance on the web deepening that distance that we feel from one another, as well as our relationship with ourselves, our ability to feel, to trust, to sense when something's off, or when something's uncomfortable and we can breathe through it, or when something's right. Like, if we can't trust ourselves, we won't even be able to trust that when we have something we want and we've worked towards, if we'll be able to really savor that and jump into it. The thing that I loved about Deb Roy's article is that it is very solution-based, so it does offer a silver lining, which is we can create ultimately and protect spaces online and offline that hold room for slowness and reflection and have space for feelings and care, where participation isn't just seen, but it's felt and it's required, actually. So this is where also I'm really focusing this language model project. I'll talk about it more as I go along. but that's at the core of the work, and it requires each individual to really be there and interact for it to offer you something. The article really stresses the value of subtle participation. You know, someone complimented me in my dance class this morning, and then we started chatting, and I was like, this is so nice, you know, and it doesn't even have to be more than that. The more interaction we have with humans that are outside of our bubbles, the greater our capacity and tolerance grows for that uncertainty, for that unknown of interaction that is human connection. I referenced an event that I attended last week at a local like architecture and alternative education space, Sheep Studio. It was so beautiful being in that space and listening to poetry, and also the patience and just like presence it required. A discussion broke out about how poetry is so embedded in Iranian culture that even casual conversations take you on this journey rather than offering a clear point or ask. And some were joking about how frustrating that can be. It's just like, just say what you mean. But we all eventually settled, on a reverence for this. It's a collective surrender to the poeticism that Farsi seems to require of its participants. I'm Ukrainian Canadian. I've also been researching a bit about the Ukrainian language, and it's really similar, actually. It can be a lot more poetic, and you can play a lot more with the language than you can with English. When we were talking about Farsi, one man shared that even, the simple phrase, I miss you, in English is really translated better to my heart literally shrunk from not talking to you in Farsi. And again, in contrast, I'm not sure that ChatGPT's heart shrinks when I don't type to it. But those are the kinds of relationships that I want in this world, and I want to see others having them. I want my heart to shrink when I miss or see a friend, and I want it to grow when I reunite with them, and I want it to ache when I see the news, and I want it to grow when I witness a new birth of someone I know or someone I don't know. These unpredictable growing and aching and like this flexibility and this nuance is what makes us human. And that exercising of like feeling like aching and joy and aching and joy and aching and joy is being on the journey from here to there, is being human together. And it's about surrendering to that unknowing. What I really worry about as life becomes more automated is that we'll really try to restrict that flow more and more, and to flatten our feelings into something palatable or efficient or binary with fewer emotions and ones that are muted, ones that don't get in the way. But what I offer in this essay is a reminder that feelings aren't things that get in the way. And maybe this is a reframing. They're not variables that we need to fight. They are our superpower. They are what makes us human and not ChatGPT. So if we're going to also coexist in a world where machines are everywhere, then we really need to focus on what sets us apart. And feelings are one of those things. And if we can learn to build relationships with ourselves and our feelings, and we can express them in creative ways and healthy ways, they're not what's going to combust us or take our sleep away. They're really what can connect us better with each other and again with ourselves. I am really, really hopeful for spaces like Substack and for that poetry night that I went to, and for spaces that are giving us room to connect casually with one another, that aren't like, student teacher spaces, but just that value the expertise of all of us. Even that poetry night, I was like, I just want to stay in and I want to just be on my own. It's easier, I also felt strongly about everything going on in the world. It is a time also to show up in community and to be there for people and to show them, regardless of where you're at, that you can show up. And I think that regardless of the place that we're all at, is something that is vital as we move forward and as we navigate these trying times. So at the end of my essay, I just offered reminders of how important it is to say hello to your neighbors. I'm a runner casually. I love the culture of when you run past someone, looking at them and and offering a nod or a smile. And I've been trying to integrate that more into my everyday life. I'm also from a small town, so it's a lot more regular there to do that to people that you don't know. No one typically rejects when you say hello to them. I think it's like a pleasant surprise. And maybe we'll encourage them to do that to someone next. I encourage people to be thinking about the grief that is rippling throughout the world right now and to just pause with it and say a prayer for it. I want to close with something actually from a podcast that I listened to last night by this wonderful singer-songwriter, folk musician, Monrovia. And he was talking about how it can be easy to fall in love with your own suffering and how we can start to think that we deserve to suffer in some ways. I've definitely felt this way in my life as well, because suffering can become a friend in a way. And if I fall in love with my suffering, then I remove the desire for feeling anything else. When you fall in love with your own suffering, and he mentioned this as well, you stop noticing all of the hands that are reaching towards you and the people who are there for you and who see maybe something else inside of you other than your suffering. It's a really, really important time to acknowledge that just because life is full of suffering, he said this, it doesn't take away from you belonging in the world. How we can use our relationship to our past to really practice this art of continuation, that beautiful things can come, that the past can feel so complicated, but the present and moving forward might be hard, but it doesn't have to be complicated. But having people around you to really hold your hands through that is what makes it bearable. And when you look around, take a moment from your suffering, you might realize that you're very loved. And I hope that that resonates with people. And I think that is something that can only come from other people who see the messiness that is you and love you anyways. No productivity needed, no improvements necessary to simply be loved. Thank you for being here and sitting with me in my first mini essay conversation. And I'm excited to do more and share more about the project as well as the research that informed it. So yeah.